What's up, guys? It's me again. I'm doing my BBCF offensive mentality video. It has a lot to do with like offensive structure, using reactable mix-up and stuff like that, and generally just like how you want to be thinking about this kind of thing. I hope my mic isn't too close to my face, but yeah, let me get into it. So I have my notebook, as you may have seen. A few notes. So, I would just want to talk about offensive approach, how a player should approach offense in this game, right? So, I'll talk a little more about like contextual stuff in a bit, but I kind of made another video about defensive ideas that you want to apply while playing, and those are kind of like, use at high level play. So, this video will kind of like relate to that, so if you haven't seen that video, you should go ahead and watch it. So, the first thing is I want to talk about the ideology of structure, right? And kind of pressure versus mix-up. So, pressure is literally about keeping your opponent in block stun, kinda, right? Or the kind of threat of keeping them in block stun, right? So, even though this is like slightly negative, just because of the stagger window, right? It's still threatening, so this is considered like pressure. It's kind of pressuring on the opponent, right? So, at any time, maybe he sees, oh, that move's negative, and I want to try to mash here. If you stagger, you can keep the string going, right? So the pressure is on them. And obviously the kind of onus of releasing them from that is on you. So that's kind of what you want to establish first to get them to sit there, right? And why does that get them to sit there? Well, if you have a hole in your block string, right? And you're just mashing all willy-nilly, oh my god, you're gonna get hit. It's gonna be a lot of damage, especially with how mids are poor rated in this game. You're gonna take a lot extra damage. So, pressure establishment, good pressure, right? What did I say? I said something. I think, yeah, good thighs are like, no. It's a bad block string is like bad thighs? No gap? I don't remember. Anyway, you want gaps, right? You want gaps in your offense just so that your opponent's inputs can come out, right? And yeah, that opens you up to getting reversaled, but there's a reason why reversals are high risk, high reward. High risk, like medium reward. They kind of reverse the momentum, but imagine if you don't put a gap there, right? Because the gap could come here, or it could come here, right? So it's pretty variable, and just because your opponent is inputting a DP. Here, let's try this. Right? You can catch them on their input potentially. Even though the DP came out here. Right? So I'm hitting him here because the input I did for DP, I ended in forward. Right? So because the timing was different, his forward input came out right where he got hit here. But here, the DP comes out because the forward input comes out a few frames earlier, right? As you can see me jabbing him while he's jumping. So, that's kind of the idea, right? It's on you. Here, watch this. Right? 5v2a. No DP came out. I'm safe. Delay 2a catches the actual DP input, right? So these are ways that you can use pressure to punish attempts at, like, mitigating it without actually extending into mix-up, right? Which is pretty interesting because you're not really taking any risks here. So that's kind of the idea, right? The entire reason we structure pressure this way is because it's like low risk for us to actually attempt to guess on someone's defensive options and stuff like that, right? And if they're actually just sitting there, then you can actually begin to exploit it. But establishing yourself is not a bad thing because of the multitude of ways you can do it, right? I didn't take a risk there. Honestly, I didn't. It hit during block stun. I was able to target a DP input, stuff like that. So you want to think about ways that your character can interact with your opponent's inputs during block stun, right? So that's kind of the idea of a lot of pressure structure in the game. You want gaps to kind of promote, mashing or whatever, so that you could reset your own pressures so that they respect and then you can take advantage of that and stuff. But the main thing is the structure is based on low risk, medium reward, or low risk, like high reward, whatever, right? So why would your opponent mash there if you can actually establish that? They won't. Or they might have to eventually if you can actually abuse that dynamic enough. So I'll get into the context stuff now, right? Because this is a kind of like pressure establishment. While they're like looking for this kind of thing, this is a very general way to talk about it, but the general idea is while they're looking for other stuff, you hit them with other stuff. Right? Wow, sounds so complicated. It's a lot more complicated than it sounds just because people react differently. You know, at the end of the day, you attempting to go for a mix-up, despite them looking for all these other things, this is still 24 frames. No matter how you do it, no matter when you do it, it's still 24 frames. But you're most likely to hit them when they're looking for other stuff, right? So that's the kind of idea. Because if you look at like normal Gatlings, right? Like this, and this, and this, and this, right? Your opponent probably knows your Gatling chart, so this overhead is more likely to come at this time, right? But imagine this, right? This is just kind of an example for it. Here's my Rekka. Your opponent's probably going to be looking to see if you are delaying this, right? So this is just the idea. I'm not saying this is going to work for you, but just take the idea and extrapolate it, right? So here, got a Rekka, and I'm like, my opponent's definitely going to look for the second one, right? You could do that. Okay, that was purple. That was still purple. My dude. Whatever. Let's do this. Right? That was cool. You're looking for second Rekka? Crush trigger. Costs a lot of meter, but that's the idea, right? Costs a lot of meter, that's the idea. So the kind of defensive options that your opponent has, right? We'll talk about how to deal with those. So this is like the context. So now we're getting into instant blocking and barrier and instant barrier, of course, right? And throw tech too. So there are innate implications of using instant block, and there are innate implications of using barrier. Right. They have an input, right? So here's the input for barrier. It's AB, right? But you have to hold it, right? And you also have to be holding back. But the main thing is also you're holding AB, right? You can't really be mashing, right? I'm trying to mash my jab. Look, it's not coming out. Even with my macro, it's not coming out, right? So if your opponent's barriering, you know that they're not necessarily mashing, but they could do this, right? They could just release it and press it, right? So you have to take advantage of that one split second that they're actually barriering, right? Why would they barrier here? This is a guard break on normal block. If you barrier it, right? Wow, what happens if you barrier it? It blocks, right? So we can kind of take advantage of this, right? At least here we know that here I know at least if my opponent is trying to barrier this and I dash cancel, they won't be mashing me out, because obviously if they're mashing, I'll explode, right? I'll definitely get hit. So that's kind of one way that you can deter mashing during down toast pressure or whatever. That's kind of like a, you know, specific context example. So that's one of the things about barrier. That also means that while you try to reset your pressure and they're barriering, you can go back in, right? So it's one thing to keep in mind. Obviously they can like tap barrier and then like jump or something and then do it again. That's like the fuzzy jump thing I was talking about, but that also has its own vulnerability within the jump input, and that's kind of a big idea. We're talking about punishing inputs here, right? At their very core, the core constraints of doing these things, how do we address them? So you can hit the jump startup by delaying your string enough and letting them jump. You remember that? Anyway, on to instant blocking, right? So here's the thing about instant blocking, right? Oops. Right here, so we instant block. Right? A nice IB. Nice IB. Here, I'll do it like that. Right? So we have an instant block here. It's cool. Very cool. He flashes white. the main thing about instant block is it requires you to go to neutral or down and then go to back, right? So that means that you're not actually blocking on those initial frames. So look at this. He got hit, right? Here's another really good example. I gotta pick the easy way. And I'll explain it while the game's loading. Actually, I should do this. I'll make it the recording. Who should I be? I'll be Nato, whatever. So, you can vary the timing of your offense to not only avoid instant block happening on your opponent's end, but punishing the input, right? So, here's a cool one, right? Let's say this. This. I want to instant block this move, right? So, I have to release back, and then I have to press back again. Because this move is plus, right? I don't want it to be plus. I'm trying to instant block. I'm trying to mash, right? So, let's have her do this. Just look at the timing for this, right? I'm going to have her do this. So there's a 1 frame gap here, right? Now, I can instant block that too, but I can't instant block both at the same time, right? Because if I try to IB the 6C and the 2-3-6B comes out, I actually get hit because I moved my lever to neutral, right? So there's a pretty good example about how to actually hit someone for trying to instant block, but you can, you know, negate IB timing like that. You can actually just outright punish instant blocks. But that's also why instant blocking during pressure is very safe, and instant blocking moves that are done like this is very safe. Because even though it's safe for your opponent to do, you have to keep in mind that your opponent, even though they... Well, so let's talk about you from the perspective of defense, right? This is very safe for your opponent to go for on offense, but it means that you can specifically move your lever to neutral or down and then back without taking the risk of being in neutral, right? Because you're stuck in block stun. And you can still buffer the instant block. So to punish something like that, you can't really punish it, but you can exploit it, right? And that's kind of what we're looking at. We're looking to exploit inputs and deal with our opponent's head and stuff like that, right? So let me pick Homegirl. And I'll pick Ragna, yeah. So let's imagine that my boy's gonna jump, right? He's gonna try instant block. Let's do this. So he instant blocked the second hit, right? I can't punish this. I can't really punish this. How am I supposed to punish it? He's in block stun no matter what, right? You can do something like that, right? Anyway. Those are kind of very fundamental ideas for dealing with these defensive options that you have to be able to integrate. And the main thing is, right, here's the whole point of the video, right, that I never want you to forget ever, right? It's all about establishing a good risk-reward, like, option set. Because ultimately, you may want to deal with this kind of thing some way, right? You might be like, hey, if this person fuzzy jumps, I could just run up in your face and air grab you because you're a scrub. That's not really how it works, right? And why? Yeah, you could do it, and if you're right, it works, but what happens if you're wrong, right? What happens if you're wrong? So I just want to make sure that you choose your offensive callouts properly, right? And this is the last part of the video. I'll just give an example of choosing your offensive callout properly, right? Let's say I'm Jin, and I know a lot of people do this, right? I want to bait throw, right? I want to bait throw. I do that because I'm a genius. Oh, okay. There you go, right? That's the net play special. They're gonna do it, but right? It doesn't beat OS Tech. Right? It doesn't beat OS Tech. It doesn't beat Fuzzy Jump, and you get punished even. That's terrible, right? So we're gonna graduate. We're gonna do air throw because we're geniuses, right? TRM, cool, cool. That's bad. That's real bad. That's a lot of damage. I'm just gonna sit there. Imagine if I don't bite. Imagine if I don't bite. Suddenly, you lose your momentum, right? So instead, I think my opponent's gonna fuzzy jump because I've established 6B as a standing throw bait. So how do I deal with this? How do I deal with this? We could go for a more traditional TRM, or we could be very, very safe and try to catch jump startup. Even though that allows them to DP, the reward is much higher, right? So, oops. Here. Wow, that's very hard to get out of. Even though I didn't necessarily get hit on jump startup, there I get hit on jump startup. This starter is pretty damn good, especially considering the situation. And what happens if I'm wrong? I can't do much, right? I can't do much. And that's the point, right? Your decision on how to structure your offense to deal with things like this involves putting yourself at very little risk. That's a great idea. That's a great idea, right? If you want to make that your baseline establishment, and then sometimes, you know, you just want to get up in there and be like, hey, what's up, TRM in the air? You can do that, but you really have to earn that respect as well, right? You got to make sure that they're not sitting there thinking, he's just gonna hang himself, because you're not gonna hang yourself, right? Because you watch this video, you're not gonna hang yourself. Anyway, I think that's about it. I remade this video because the first time I did it, I definitely wasn't happy with it, but I think this one came out pretty good. Thank you for listening this entire time. I definitely would appreciate subs on YouTube because I need the numbers so that I could apply for YouTube Partner. If you were curious about my jersey, it's the April Fool's pool party jersey, and it's pretty dope. So anyway, yeah, PG's great. I love them. I love you, maybe? See ya.